Okay, so the question is to do a Riemann sum with both left hand and right hand with 3 and 6 subdivisions of equal length. So I'm going to take you through this whole process, even though it's pretty cumbersome. And yeah, so the first thing we should do is to do a graph. And this graph is kind of a pain to do, but it's really going to help us in the long run. So I'm going to go ahead and put 1 to 7. I'm going to space them out pretty evenly. Okay. And of course I'm going to label X and Y. Of course. And then I would usually do these as 1, 2, 3 up here, but I know because of my function here that I'm going to get some fractions. And so I'm going to, let's see, 1, 2, I'm going to do it probably like this. Okay? And if your question is, well, how do you know to make it like that? Well, you just, after doing these, enough of these, you will get a feel for what your X and Y should be. So I know that when I plug in 1, I'm going to get 2, but when I plug in 7, I'm going to get 2 7s. So your Y should be able to accommodate both of those numbers. All right, so let's go ahead and just do point by point. So when X is 1, Y is 2. Okay. When X is 2, and again, I'm just plugging in here, okay? When X is 2, that's 2 over 2, so that's 1. And I'm trying to do a pretty good job of lining it up, even though I don't have graph paper. Okay, so now we get into our fractions. So when X is 3, Y is 2/3. So 2/3 is bigger than a half, but not so big as 3/4. Okay. And since I don't have a line here that I'm on, I'm actually going to label this point, and that's going to help us later on, okay? So if I plug in 4, I get 2 over 4, which is 1/2. Don't need to label that one. But here, when I plug in 5, I get 2/5, which is kind of a gross thing. There we go. So I'm going to label this one as well. 6, that gives me 2 over 6, which is 1/3, which is about here. Okay, and then finally 7s is 2 7s, and gosh, I don't even know where that is, but it doesn't really matter. It's just, let's label it 7 2 7s. Okay, so far so good. So you can see I have this beautiful function here. I'm not even going to bother to draw it in now. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which one we start with, but I'm going to go ahead and start with the left hand, and we'll do the 3 divisions first, okay? So 3 divisions, and we're going to start with the left hand. So the whole thing with Riemann sums is that you are trying to approximate the area under the curve, and I will kind of shade that in for you so you know what we're talking about from 1 to 7 here. Okay, so we're trying to estimate what this shaded area is here using shapes that we know how to take the area of. Because this is a curve and we don't really know what to do with a curve. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this up into a series of rectangles. We do know how to take the area of a rectangle. So I'm going to split this into 3 rectangles, and I'm going to find the area of those rectangles, and then I'm going to add that up, and that's going to get us a pretty crappy estimation, actually, of the area under the curve here, okay? And then you'll see the more rectangles we take, the better our estimate is going to get, okay? So we're going to start with the left hand, and we're going to just do 3. So from 1 to 7, I'm going to split this into 3 rectangles of equal size. And that's easy enough because, as you can see, that's just like each one has a width of 2, so that's convenient. Now, the deal with the left hand versus the right hand. So let's take a look at our first rectangle here. That's this one here, okay? Well, on this side, it goes up to here, and on this side, it goes up to here. You see that's where it hits the curve? And the deal with the left hand is, okay, you're going to take the left hand side, and that's how you're going to determine your height. Okay, so this first rectangle is going to have a height that looks like that. And again, you can see this is going to be a huge overestimate, but that's okay. That's what the question asks us to do. Okay, so for our first rectangle, we have it here, and I'm just going to draw all three first, and then we'll do the calculation, okay? So here, this is the left side, so this is what we're going to use for our height. Again, this is the left side. This is what we're going to use for our height. So we have these three rectangles here. What is the area of this first rectangle? Well, area of a rectangle is height times width. So the height here, well, that's given to us on the y-axis. The height is just 2, easy enough. And the width, from 1 to 3, that also is 2. Cool. So the next one here, aren't you glad we wrote our point here so we knew exactly what the value is? That value is 2/3. And the width, once again, is 2. And finally, our last rectangle, that's this guy here. And here's our height, it's 2/5. And our width, again, is 2. Okay? So, if this were the AP exam, you would leave this exactly as it is. You don't want to be penalized for making a silly arithmetic error, but your teacher probably wants you to simplify this a little more. So let's do that. Okay, and probably your teacher wants you to do this a little more as well. So we've got 4 plus, let's see, common denominator here would be 15. So to get 3 to 15, we multiply by 5. We're going to multiply that top by 5 as well. Okay. Here, to get to 15, we multiply by 3. I'm going to multiply that top by 3. Gosh darn it. I said 3 and wrote 3. There we go. 4 times 3 is 12. And this says 15. Just trust me on that. So we have 4 and 32 over 15, which is still kind of ugly. So let's make this, let's see, 6 plus 2 over 15. I probably would let you leave it like that. So we're going to move on. Let's see. Now let's say we want the right hand one. So this is going to be a little confusing here. So let me erase my left hand marks. It's a good thing I wrote them kind of light, and you should too. Okay? If you don't want to confuse yourself with other markings, this question's confusing enough, right? Okay, so once again, we're going to use these same widths because we're using 3 rectangles. So for our first rectangle now, we're going to use the right-hand side to figure out our height. So you go up to here and draw it over. Again, I'm going to draw it kind of light. You can still see it, but we can erase it pretty easily. Here's the second rectangle. And I'm going to use the right-hand side to determine the height. Last one, right-hand side determines the height. Now, as you can see, this is a gross underestimate because look how small this rectangle is in comparison to all this area. But that's okay, that's what the question asked us to do. So, we have 3 rectangles. The area of a rectangle is height times width. So the height for our first rectangle now is our 2/3. And the width is same as the last one. It's going to be 2. Okay. Now over here, our second rectangle, the height is denoted by the right-hand side, so that's 2/5. The width is still 2, okay? And the last one here, this last one has a width of 2/7. Sorry, a height of 2/7 and a width of 2. So we're going to do just a little bit of arithmetic here. Not too bad. And then it could be that your teacher's going to want you to simplify this, which would be kind of terrible, but we can make it happen. So the common denominator here, gosh, there's not a good one, is there? If you're ever lost, you can always just multiply them all together. 3 times 5 times 7 will get you there. And in case you're rusty with your arithmetic like I am, let me go ahead and show you what I'm doing down here. Yeah, I had to cheat a little bit. So 105, gosh, that is super gross. But if that's the common denominator, so be it. So let's see how we got there. We did 35 times 3 to get 105. So 35 times 4, gosh, can you imagine? Is 140. Okay. So let's see, to get 5 to 105, what do? We multiply by 21. That one's a little easier at least. So 21 times 4 is 84. And this last one I multiplied 7 by 15. 15 times 4 is 60. Okay, so we can add all those together. Ugh, I can't believe how gross this is. This is 144, so that's 284 over 105. Okay, again, on the AP exam, you can leave it just like this. This is only if your teacher wants you to simplify it, okay? So there you go. So we have our left hand here and our right hand here. And you can see they are very different. If we were to simplify this, it would be, let's see, 2, 210, so that would be 74 left over plus 74 over 105. So you can see, though, how different they are. This one is 6 and some change, and this is 2.5 about. So they are very different in their estimates. And both of them are pretty poor estimates. So the question you should be asking yourself is, how do I get a better estimate for this? Well, one way you can get a better estimate using Riemann sums is just taking more Riemann sums. So in an effort to not have to draw this over again, I'm going to just do this, okay? Everybody see? Okay. So first asked us to take 3, and now we're going to take 6. Okay, 6 subdivisions of each length. Okay, so we're going to start on the left hand side again. So this time, instead of having 3 rectangles, it's asking us to take 6 rectangles, which is still convenient because there are 6 units between 1 and 7, so that works. So we're going to have this. You can see there's 6 here. The left hand, that means on our first rectangle here, we're going to use the left side to determine our height. So I'm going to go up to the left and draw over like that. Okay. Here's our second rectangle. The left hand side is going to tell us our height. Like this, this, this. Okay. So now we have 6 rectangles. So I'm just going to do this. And this seems maybe a little silly, but to set it up kind of ahead of time, but I think you will find that it makes it easy. That way you don't get caught up in what you're doing, okay? So now Let's look at our first rectangle. The height is determined by the left-hand side. The height here is 2. And the width this time is just going to be 1. You see that? Okay. For our second rectangle, the height is being determined by the left-hand side. So height here is 1. And the width also is 1. Spoiler alert, the width is going to be 1 for all of these, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in now. Okay. Here, okay, height is 2/3. Here, height is 1/2. Here, height is 2/5. And here the height is 1/3. Okay? And I am probably not going to do this arithmetic. I'll just write out kind of what it looks like. Okay? And if your teacher is mean like me and wants you to simplify that, go ahead and find the common denominator. I think you'll find it's 30. And then you can kind of do it from there, okay? The last one we're going to do is right hand Riemann for 6. So I'm going to erase our left hand markings. Okay, good. We're going to go to our curve. For each rectangle, we're going to let the right hand side tell us where the height is. The right tells us where the height is. Okay. So for this first rectangle, you can see here's the rectangle, but our shape is all the way up here. So this is again going to be an underestimate. Okay. So let's see. The height here is 1. And let me go ahead and make my little brackets here. There are 6 rectangles, so I'm making 6 of these little things. And I know the width of each of these rectangles already. The width is 1, so I'm going to fill that in. That's easy enough. Okay, we already got the height for the first one. Height for the second, aren't you glad we wrote this in, is 2/3. We don't have to guess or plug in every time. That would be a bummer. Okay, for the next one here, the height is 1/2. Here, height is 2/5. Here, height is 1/3. And for this last one, the height is 2/7. Okay, so we have 1 plus 2/3 plus 1/2 plus 2/5 plus 1/3 plus 2/7. And I'm definitely not going to do the arithmetic here because I think once again your common denominator is 105, which is a lot. So we're not gonna do that. But there's a couple conclusions you can draw from Riemann sums. There's a couple patterns you should be able to see. One of the patterns you should notice straight away is the left hand and the right hand actually have a lot of terms in common, right? So you can see 1/2, 1/2, 2/3, 2/3, 1/2, right? So you can see that a lot of these are the same except for the first one and the last one here. So that's one quick way on the AP exam. If it asks you to do both, you can kind of cheat a little bit and say, okay, well, I already know 1 2/3, 1/2, 2/5, and 1/3 are going to be the same. So that's one way you can do it. I would highly recommend writing the graph every time and really looking at the graph every time, though, until you get really good at this. So I hope that answers all your questions. And yeah, this is not a difficult concept, but it is a tedious one. So hopefully this helped clarify that. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out.